Hello, Mr. Patel.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am well. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me again for yet another wonderful conversation. Today I wanted to talk about pranayama.
Okay.
How do you think that'll go? I wanted to ask you first, what is your definition of pranayama?
I don't particularly like the definition that's generally given is control of prana. Control is too strong a word. Prana is something that governs all the energies of the universe. To say I'm going to control that is not a very good way of looking at it. It's more like prana is there, I'm going to let my body channel it. Just like, if there is a river flowing and it's causing flood, people talk of controlling the flood. You don't control the flood. You channel the river flow so the flood does not come out of the banks of the river. It's that kind of sense.
So in applying to the yogi, can you expound a little more?
In the body, according to the yogic concept, there are 5 major pranas, 5 minor prana. It's the same prana but expressed in a variety of ways. And there are some particular prana where by using my mind, I can take that energy and channel it in particular areas. It begins with the breath. But the breath is considered bringing pranic energy from outside into my body. And when it is expressed in different ways in the body, then I can direct that energy to specific areas.
So it's bringing energy from the outside, but we also have some inside too, yes?
Yes and no. From inside, it's more psychological. The actual energy comes from outside.
Interesting. So it would be more beneficial, for example, to do pranayama in a forest as opposed to in the middle of
definitely.
a city?
Very definitely.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't have to do just with the cleanness of the air. It's the energy of the living things.
It's more than clean air. It's this, the atmosphere created by the trees. And if it's a mountain, atmosphere created by the mountain.
Have you done pranayama in a forest?
Yes, I have.
And you really could feel the difference?
To the extent that I did not want to stop going to the forest.
Wow, interesting. Okay. So why do you think the most common definition to the English speaker is energy control?
I think you have to ask the English people.
So you just think it's not the most accurate translation?
It's not. There is cultural problem also. You cannot translate things word for word like we were talking the other time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's energy management, would you say? Is that more accurate instead of like pranic control or
management or even channeling?
Mm-hmm.
Managing in the sense of channeling it.
So that is the art of pranayama, is that you're trying to bring more energy from the outside to a specific place in your body? Or
yes.
Would you, so that makes me think a beginner is not going to feel the ability to channel it to a specific place. So
nor should the beginner try that.
Okay, so that's my next question. So when teaching pranayama to a beginner, how do you like to start somebody?
Looking at their physique, their body, I would want to see what can I do with this person so they have a bigger expanse of the chest and breathe a little more deeply. The more physical, more effortless it is, the better. So the beginner would generally, within Iyengar system also, would be told lie down and do it.
And is I've heard that Mr. Iyengar was one of the first people to introduce the idea of lying down pranayama, that in the more classic books of yoga, everyone's sitting up.
Yes.
So obviously that's easier for the beginner because it's hard for them to sit for a long time, but what is the effect of that energetically for lying down? Like, do you not get as much benefit lying down as sitting up?
In some ways, you don't get as much benefit. On the other hand, the ability to feel what the breath should do is better felt in the lying down position. Like on inhalation, the sense should be the skin is moving forward. Mr. Iyengar's description was actually like the back body loves the front body. So it comes to embrace the front body. That sense, because you're lying on the floor, your back is on a support, that sensation is much better.
And then what pranayama would you give to a beginner initially? Just Ujjayi?
Just Ujjayi.
Okay.
Not holding, just inhale, exhale.
Okay.
There's a natural pause at the end of inhalation, that's fine. But not to try to make it bit better or longer.
Okay, so let's say this this student that we're making up is progressing well and you're ready to introduce them to the next thing. What would you do next? Would you continue?
I'm going to look at their asana. Depending on what they are doing with the asana practice, then I would change how I teach pranayama.
Would you generally would you keep them lying down and then maybe teach them either inhale retention or exhale retention?
Yes.
Yeah. So at what point do you feel it's the next step for someone to be able to sit up? Obviously.
Well, once I'm satisfied that they've understood what I'm teaching them, even though they may not be doing it perfectly, then I would say once a week maybe start sitting up. But not go, from lying down position to always sitting. Continue lying down, just once a week, sit up. And depends on the person.
Yeah.
Maybe even once a month.
Right. So for the typical beginner, their level of feeling subtlety is not great. So what is the benefit in the beginning, like maybe let's say the first year or two of someone just doing supported on the floor, Ujjayi? Like what is the biggest benefit? Is it quieting themselves or?
Yes, quieting indeed, yes. But by just doing the practice like that, the sensitivity grows.
Right. Yeah. And ideally they're getting more energy. Do they feel more energetic or?
More alive. Yeah. More energy in that sense of you feel more alive.
And then, so for the intermediate student, what I know it's hard to, everybody's an individual, so it's hard to give a specific, but you told me that you feel the most effective pranayama is Nadi shodhana. Is that's for you or?
No, generally pranayama basically means Nadi shodhana pranayama. And it is to help Nadi shodhana that you do all other practices of pranayama.
Can you say a little more about that?
Like Tadasana is the only real posture.
Right.
To help Tadasana, to make it better, perfect shall we say, all other postures are given. By itself it's difficult to make Tadasana good. Same is true with pranayama. Yes, people have various kinds of restriction in the movement of the breath, movement of this energy. So other pranayamas help. Excuse me.
So you're saying Nadi shodhana is the Tadasana of pranayama?
Yes.
I love that. That's a great bumper sticker.
In fact, growing up when we heard of pranayama, people doing pranayama, it was always Nadi shodhana.
Interesting.
People didn't do it as well as Mr. Iyengar teaches, but that was what they call pranayama.
And is that because of the balancing of the two energies?
Yes, there is a definite difference between the breath going through the left nostril and the right nostril. Right is generally heating, the left is generally cooling. And in most healthy people, breath automatically switches every few hours from predominating in the right to the left. That is supposed to keep the brain in a not too hot or too cold a condition.
What are some of the reasons you would want to do retention?
Retention makes the ability to do inhalation and exhalation more refined. Okay? Like a transition would be Viloma. Okay? Where you inhale, stop, inhale more, stop. That, can you break it up? Generally the steps given are 3 to 5.
Right.
But can you think of your inhalation as thousands of steps?
And is that for which every time you stop, you're kind of looking at that band in the body? Yes, that's
Yes.
my experience.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the more bands you can break it up to, the more refined you're getting.
Not to make pranayama jerky,
Right.
but just to think of it as at every stage there is that kind of expansion in steps.
And so let's say you're saying, okay, I feel it, I'm holding here, and then I'm holding here, and then I'm holding here, and then I feel some restriction in that band, then that gives me information to work on in a different way.
On that.
Interesting.
Because I would do the same restriction would be there when I'm doing ujjayi even. It gives me ability to notice that.
So for the beginner, we are lying them down, usually with their spine and head supported, yes. For the person that's moving into sitting up, do you feel there is an ideal seated posture out of the ones that are given, like Virasana, Baddha Konasana, Siddhasana?
I have never done this, but my sense is that from lying down position, going to seated position is not very good. From lying down, it should be more reclining. So, in English, I would say, suppose it's less and less reclining.
So you're slowly going up.
Slowly going up.
So you would take them from a blanket under the spine to a bolster supported by blocks? Is that?
Or even kind of an inclined chair like this.
So you could do pranayama in a lazy boy. That would.
As long as you're not being lazy.
Okay. Okay. All right. So do you? I know that you pretty much are trained with Mr. Iyengar and Patanjali's pranayama, but there's other texts of yoga that talk about pranayama. Are you familiar with them? Can you say anything about the difference between them, or do you feel like you don't have enough?
No, I learned from my father. And then I came across a few teachers. But when I came across Mr. Iyengar, I decided to just focus on that and forget about all other systems.
Okay, so you haven't really looked into the other.
I have not.
Okay, so this is a question that has come up a couple times with other teachers in other traditions other than Iyengar, is they feel that because there's so many rules in the Iyengar tradition about, you need to do pranayama every day or forget it, and you need to do it this way, and it has to be so exacting that a lot of people just don't do it because they're like, I can't be that perfect. So
I would suggest these people should look at, do you eat every day? Do you go to bathroom every day? Somebody told me one time that, I go to bathroom only once or twice a week. That is sickness.
So you're equating that to not doing pranayama every day?
Yeah, because it's not only a training of the breath and the energy that we talked about, it's a training of your mind. And hence, if you don't do it regularly, it will not have as good an effect as desired.
It won't have as good of effect, but I've heard teachers say that if you don't do it every day, then don't even bother. And that just seems like, really? Like, don't I get some benefit if I miss a day here and there?
And people do miss a meal here and there also. So it's not detrimental. You will get some benefit from it. But the system of yoga demands discipline.
Yeah.
And hence to impose that discipline on self. Not a rigid discipline like of a military, but a discipline of a disciple. That requires regular practice.
Well, I'm also thinking of the exactness of the fold of the blankets and where where your head support is and how you're sitting. And those things are all important, but let's say you're traveling and you don't have access to a lot of things and all you can do is lay on the floor.
So the advice given is don't travel. If that's not possible,
Okay.
and you, for other circumstances, you are forced to travel, then in that recognize that it's restricted and do the best you can.
Okay.
But that would apply to any situation in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do the best you can. Purposely to say, no, I'm not going to do as best as I can is not acceptable.
So you don't believe in the saying, don't make perfect the enemy of the good. So if I'm a good practitioner, I can't be perfect, but I can be good.
No, I won't say I can't be perfect. I try to be perfect. Mm-hmm. The fact that the body, the mind don't quite make it is the law of nature. Mm-hmm. But I don't sit about saying since I can't do perfectly, therefore I'll give myself permission to be a little more lazy. That's not acceptable.
Okay, so I know in your case, you decided to give up sleep because you had so many demands on your time. And so would you say that for the person who says, I don't have any time, I've got 3 kids and I've got a demanding job, and, if they gave up a half hour of sleep and did pranayama, that would be more beneficial than sleeping?
I would first teach them to stop using the language where you are saying, I don't have time. Really recognize what's going on and learn to tell yourself honestly that my preference is somewhere else. To tell I don't have time is actually a lie, or it's not as truthful. If my preference is to do something, I should recognize that is my preference and I'm happy doing it.
I see. So someone with a demanding job and a lot of children to take care of, they would prioritize spending time with their child rather than doing pranayama.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're just saying make peace
Because
with it.
as we said earlier, it's a training of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to recognize that I am doing with my mind what I prefer to be doing is important. To do something and then feel guilty about it is crazy.
Yeah. So I've also heard you say over the years that the best time to do pranayama is just before sunrise.
Just before sunrise. But that is considering that you live in a tropical country.
You mean, why does that?
If you
why
live
does
in
that
Alaska or
yeah.
you can't have that.
Right. That would be problematic. Yeah. Okay. So the closer to the equator, the better. Yeah. So, okay. Can you say why? I know you've had the experience. You've said, I don't think, I know. I've heard you say that in class. I know that's a better time.
Because there is a more balance in the atmosphere itself. Mm-hmm. The whole world is waking up. And similarly, second best time would be just after or just before sunset. Because everything is calming down. Mm-hmm. Air is not disturbed during the night, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. So when I get up and do it in the morning, the very sense of that air is different.
So I've also read, I think it was in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, that then the next best time is either noon or midnight.
Midnight.
And what? Same thing?
Same thing. There's a better balance in the atmosphere.
And you can feel that.
Definitely. Most people can feel that if only they would pay attention.
Do pranayama more regularly?
Even without pranayama, to see how the balance in nature changes.
Yeah. Yeah. But does it really change at midnight? I'm never awake for that, so...
If you are not used to waking up and doing it at midnight, you won't notice the difference. But if you start working like that, you will see that midnight is a very definite change.
Interesting.
The world begins to wake up at midnight. So there is a definite transition from midnight before the midnight to midnight
sunlight.
after the midnight.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So Mr. Iyengar also says to not do asanas after pranayama. He says that in Light on Pranayama. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
Because of the way Mr. Iyengar teaches and kind of practice he demands, yes, I agree with it. Because the intention of pranayama is to calm down your nervous system.
Yeah.
Asanas don't do that.
Some asanas do.
Not the same quality. Yes, some asanas do, you're right. But not, the quality is different.
Mm-hmm.
My nervous system calming down from pranayama on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say it's 8. Okay? Even when I do asana that are calming, it is maybe 6 if I'm lucky.
Mm-hmm. And then when you do pranayama?
8 or more.
I see. And then, okay.
It's different. Quality is different.
So, I know again, this is dependent on the person, the practitioner, what they're dealing with, the body they have, the practice they have. But are there categories of poses that you think are better to precede the pranayama practice?
Back bends generally are better.
Yeah, but they're very heating and stimulating. So, supported back bends?
Yes.
And can you say which ones? Like
Setu bandha, but with different leg positions. The way the femur grounds is different in different poses.
Mm-hmm.
So lying down, most people do Setu bandha sarangasana, lying down with the legs straight.
Right.
Okay. Even in that position, to tie the legs together, it gives a very different sense. Then to put the legs either in Baddha Konasana or Padmasana has different effect.
So so that makes me think of you're saying Setubandha, elevating the pelvis as opposed to elevating the chest. Let's say you're on the floor with blocks, under your chest, opening your chest. Why is it preferable in general, to elevate the pelvis and not the chest to prepare for pranayama? Can you comment on that?
No, I don't know that I ever said elevating the pelvis is better for pranayama.
Okay, you said that was the pose you chose, so I'm wondering if you think if there's some advantage to that.
For that pose itself, it's better to elevate pelvis, because what I've seen is for people, pelvis doesn't quite get lifted. They are pushing the floating ribs up much more. That I don't think is correct.
Okay, so let me ask the question a different way. Is there an advantage to elevating the pelvis in a back bend as opposed to elevating the chest if you're thinking of pranayama is coming?
Not if you're thinking of pranayama, no.
Okay.
If you're thinking of just other flow in the body or a particular prana, then like if you're thinking of apana vayu more, then it's better. But in pranayama, we don't think that way. Think of pranavayu only, really.
Really? Can you say a little more about that? Why do you not think about pranavayu?
Because you're using the breath,
mm-hmm.
which affects the pranavayu most.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can use your mind to channel that energy to different parts. But that is, for example, for an advanced practitioner.
Mm-hmm. I always think of using my breath to balance the prana apana. I mean, is that incorrect thinking?
No, balance comes first.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is definite sense where less time is spent. The inhalation duration is shorter, exhalation is longer. So that's not a balance.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little more?
I inhale and I inhale a little rapidly. I exhale and I slow down that exhalation, so it takes longer time.
And that is to encourage the prana in the chest, you're saying?
It encourages a lot of other things. Even what happens when a person dies, for example. Okay. You don't want to die. Exhalation is related to that sense.
Mm-hmm, right.
So you elongate that sense of, even though I'm exhaling, I'm taking longer to do that.
So you're somehow tricking.
the mind to live longer.
Okay. Which may or may not be a good thing depending on what's going on,
Depending
right?
on who you are.
Exactly. And what's your karma? So, all right, in seated pranayama, we're generally told to lift the chest, drop the chin, while keeping the skin on the back moving down. And, I know for myself, I'm only speaking for myself, but also my students, a lot of us have a little bit forward head thing going on for, I don't know why, maybe electronic devices. And it's not easy to do that. Like I can find that I think I'm doing it, and then all of a sudden the skin is starting to creep up, or my neck starts to bother me a little bit. So, what would you advise to not?
My advice is do Setu Bandha and do Sarvangasana.
Before my pranayama.
No, to check what my ability to drop the chin is. The very language "drop the chin" I do not like.
Okay, say why.
Lift the chest.
So don't even talk about the chin.
No.
But you do have to drop. You do.
It's not a drop. It's a release of the neck forward.
Right.
And in my own practice, I found that creating and getting a sense of how to release the tailbone forward, that gives me an idea of what it means to release the neck forward. The cervical vertebra is released forward. It is not yanked forward.
Right. Can you talk about what the hyoid bone is doing when you do that?
That's a very interesting bone. As you know, it is the only bone in the body that's not connected to any other bone.
I know. It is really interesting.
So I have a sense of what happens to the musculature, the cartilage around. I don't have a direct sense of what happens to the bone.
What do you think should happen? So you're saying you can't feel it, but what is your sense that what it should be doing if everything is optimal? Is it moving back?
I think what you call drop the chin, the control for that, when I say release it forward, comes from that bone and whatever cartilage and muscles are attached to it. From whatever I read about that bone, it's a very complex situation. But it's been called floating bone.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that description because when I go to Jalandhar Bandha, there is a sense of floating of that bone, not dropping the chin.
So maybe that would be a better instruction if someone anatomically knew where it was. I know.
Anatomically, you have to know first what it is.
That's actually it's a much softer, subtle action than drop your chin.
Yeah. And in order to encourage that softness in pranayama, for people who get neck pain doing that kind of thing, are given a support under the chin. But then they give rest on that support. That's not the idea.
Right.
The support is there just to create a space between the chest and the chin, so the chest can support the chin, not the chin drop more.
Right. Right. So you're putting a support there. The chest should lift the support up rather than, for a lot of people, they just use it to lean on. And so it sinks the chest.
I'll go back to Sarvangasana. If they cannot bring the chin down on Sarvangasana, they should not be emphasizing move the chin down on pranayama.
So then is it okay in Ramanand Patel's Pranayama book to not drop the chin when seated pranayama? Or would you tell that person, if you can't do it, it'd be better for you to do lying down?
No, with some support, you should still attempt to sit up when you're ready for sitting pranayama.
Okay.
To stay constantly lying down pranayama is not a good idea.
Why?
It's not pranayama.
Okay, don't make the perfect the enemy of
See,
the good.
For that matter, take meditation. Okay? Lying down meditation is given to people also. Okay? But to constantly do that is not advisable. You are supposed to be sitting up in meditation. Because when you lose the sense of the physical body in lying down, you are essentially drifting towards sleep. When you lose that sense in seated position, it's a very different sensation. You are not falling asleep.
So you were saying at the beginning of this conversation that we're using the breath to direct it to certain places in our body.
Not the breath, prana.
Prana, excuse me. So you're saying now you're stressing how important it is to sit up. What if someone is generally healthy and they don't feel like they have any particular specific area they want to send the energy to? Then are you putting it through your center? I mean,
Yeah, even a person who is generally healthy, like many children are, okay? But if you ask them to sit on a couch, they slump. Okay? That slumping should be prevented.
okay, so what's the advantage of sitting up in a good tall spine, doing pranayama and directing it to
Your
your
breath itself moves better when you sit up straight. Otherwise, the kind of compression you create on your abdominal organs restricts the movement of the diaphragm, which then restricts the movement of the breath.
And a lot of other things too.
I mean, a lot of other things.
So you're saying in an optimal position with an optimal breathing, you're bringing more movement to the entire insides of your body? Okay.
Also, the effect of the breath itself is not very good for most people, almost everybody, in the clavicle area. When they find that there is a seat of TB or something like that in the body, the effect is most in these extreme corners. Okay. So, in lying down position, even if you try and keep the chest open, the breath doesn't quite penetrate there. Not as good as in seated position.
You would think it would be the opposite because you're lying
But
down.
it's not. Experientially, you know it is not.
And so you're saying most people can't get to the space on the outer edges of your collarbones, but through practice you can access it.
You can
And
access
opening that up is crucial for better health for your
Even
lungs.
in inhalation retention, it is taught, as you know, that at the end of the inhalation, before you do the retention, lift the chest a little more actively. That is to teach that breath to penetrate much more deeply into the upper clavicle area.
Would it help, I'm just thinking out loud here, but to help someone feel that, would it help to have them lie down with sandbags grounding the head of the humerus so they could get in there?
Sandbag would help in the sense that they push the head of the humerus down.
Right.
You want to pressure downward more. What would help somebody is to put hands here
Above the collarbone.
above the collarbone, push down with the hands or the fingers, but against that pressure, lift the chest.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank
I'm
you.
not suggesting that you do pranayama like that.
Right. You're saying just to get the sense
Just to
of
get
it.
the sense
yeah.
of what that lift is.
Yeah. Okay. So, I asked you about the older texts, but maybe you have a comment on this. But some of the older texts have.
To go back,
yeah.
I'm sorry, to
No,
go
don't
back
be
to
sorry.
your initial thing.
Yeah.
In lying down, it would help if I'm lying down, you put your feet or something against it and push on it. Not too hard, but so that I have that isometric sense that as you push on it, I'm lifting the chest.
So yeah. So your chest is lifting up into the feet, and then you want to try to recreate that on your own without somebody's feet on your
Yes.
shoulders. I like that image though. Okay, so I know you said you don't have a lot of familiarity with some of the older texts, but you might have a comment. Some of them tell you to, once you are a more established practitioner of pranayama, to do it to kind of an extreme, to create, the rising of kundalini and things like that. And I know you're a very long time practitioner.
I find this very interesting. All along there is an objection to Mr. Iyengar being too strict. And now suddenly doing it to an extreme is good?
Very different. The strictness is about the setup, like that you have to, everything has to be folded a certain way, and you have to have your pose be a certain way, and you have to do it at this time and this many minutes. This is a little different.
It is to encourage that what you are now calling extreme.
Okay, so then
It's not just for I can put the blanket and fold it very nicely and then sit and watch. Nothing would happen. The intention of doing that is to have this, what you are now calling extreme movement.
So then you are saying that's in line with what Mr. Iyengar teaches, and you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing if the attitude of the person doing it is properly trained, that this is not a fight against something. This is more a devotional practice.
Mm-hmm. But I can think of someone I know who is a very, very serious practitioner, and he really pushed it one time with his pranayama practice, and he had such extreme heat in his body, like he turned completely red and couldn't get himself to cool down for a couple hours. It like really scared him, but he pushed it, and so
the learning is don't push it like that.
right.
See, the very word push I would object to.
Mm-hmm.
Grow into it. Now, take that word grow. When you grow up, are you pushing yourself?
No.
You grow into it.
Mm-hmm. But you have to test to know sometimes, right?
You have to push the boundary a little bit. As you grow up, you try to learn and sit a little erect.
Mm-hmm. He pushed it too much.
He pushed it too much.
Yeah.
And I would congratulate the person that you are devoted enough to the practice that you are willing to push like this. But learn from that's not the way to push. The word push, as I said, should be eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Around pranayama. Yeah. Okay, here's an interesting question. Can you tell me what your 80-year-old self would tell your 40-year-old self about pranayama?
Today, the 80-year-old self says to the 40-year-old self that these are not two different selves.
Okay, that's a start. But I'm sure that your practice has changed and what you thought was important.
The practice
at
as
40.
it reflects in the body has changed.
Mm-hmm. So would you, looking back, and if it was possible to say, hey, 40-year-old Ramanand, you're being too or not enough, or I would give you advice. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out.
See, the 40-year-old tries to push, use the word push here, push into getting better. Okay, 80-year-old says, I don't want to push at all. There is a happy balance between the two. The 40-year-old perhaps should not be pushing so hard, and the 80-year-old should not say that I can't push.
So was that you at 60? Split the difference?
I think I was 59.
Okay. Anything else that you think you would tell yourself looking back?
We very briefly sort of scratched on this, that why are you doing pranayama? It is to do ultimately with the mind and not with the body. The body is a vehicle you use to get there. Same with asana. Simply to do asana practice, like I think Swami Vivekananda describes it, that a banyan tree lives for 1,000 years, but it's a banyan tree. The idea is not to simply live longer for sake of living longer.
Right.
Live longer so you can do something with the mind. Ultimate battle is in the mind.
And the ultimate battle is in that mind?
The sense of ego, me, begins when I'm a child, and then gets very strong. So I consider the self as being separate from this self or that self or that self. Okay. Can I get at least an imaginary sense to begin with, that I'm no different than a cat, except in the physical form, and no different from trees. Go hug a tree. Okay? And if the attitude is correct, the tree will give you a lot of nourishment. Not even hugging, just sitting by the tree will do that. And same with animals. Same with, all human beings. The whole idea of, Russia fighting Ukraine it's so silly, it makes me cry.
Yeah. I understand.
It's madness.
Yeah, it is. And that's why we do yoga, right? To try to to deal with it all. Yeah.
Because this kind of war is going on, you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh no, it's still not stopped.
Yeah.
It should hurt.
So, from a yoga perspective, what would you say? I mean, I've asked you many times because I feel like one of the reasons I'm an activist is because of you, actually. Like, can you do something about it, you know? But sometimes you can't do anything about it. Like, you know, we're pretty powerless about what's going on there. Yes, we can pray.
You are always powerless.
Okay, but what does yoga philosophy tell the person?
It says do the best you can and then pray.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And the best I can changes from time to time, from situation to situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But even when I'm physically doing something about it, I don't forget the idea of prayer. Now, I will never do this, but as an example, I'm saying, if somebody gives me a rifle and says, okay, this is the enemy, shoot. Behind pulling the trigger, I would have that idea of I'm praying. I'm not out to kill you. I'm out to prevent the damage that you are causing.
Right.
To kill somebody for sake of killing is an absurd idea.
Yeah.
You have to kill sometimes in order to prevent them from doing the damage they are doing.
And that's the lesson in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even, a mosquito bites me and I kill the mosquito. Not because I want to kill it. I wish it would not bite. But if this is the only way I can prevent the damage it's causing, then unfortunately I do it. But that I would apply that to being a vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
Why eat non-veg food when vegetarian food is available in abundance?
Yeah. So the path of nonviolence, do less harm, do the best you can, and if you can't do anything about something, pray.
Pray even when you are able to do something, because your strength, your ability to do that is still coming from the divine.
And who exactly are you praying to?
The divine. God, if you will. Very funny idea of God some people have, but
well,
that's
why I was asking. So what is your idea of God?
All that is here is God.
So you're praying to all that is.
All that is. Okay. And not just physically, at every level. Just try a very simple exercise. Sit quietly and feel like I am the whole of humanity. Okay? It changes your breath.
Mm-hmm.
Ramanand Patel is only a very tiny expression of that humanity. But I am humanity. I like strong emphasis by Krishnamurti. He says, I eradicate the idea that I am the society. Society is me.
Mm-hmm.
We think we are separate. I am the product of the society.
You said something really beautiful in class the other day that we all know, but you said it. You said what connects us all to the whole world is our breath. Like, because we're all, and that's actually been talked about in science. Like, we're actually breathing some of the air that, like Thomas Jefferson, you think about that. That's pretty mind-blowing, but and beautiful.
Connect to that what the trees do.
Yeah.
They take our carbon dioxide, give us oxygen.
Yeah.
We give them carbon dioxide. It's a wonderful relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So the trees are doing pranayama too.
Without calling it pranayama. Thank God they don't have the language.
As far as we know. We don't know what they're saying behind our back. All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. There's a million more questions I want to ask, which I know.
I want to say something.
Yeah, please.
What are the trees saying? They're looking at us and they are saying, these people think they're intelligent, but look how stupid they are. Behavior doesn't show they're intelligent.
Did you hear them saying that?
If I listen carefully, yes.
Yeah. Do you hear them saying that?
The bigger trees also shadow the smaller trees, so that kind of fight goes on there also.
Yeah.
But they don't manufacture weapons. This is what humans do.
Once in a while they drop a limb on somebody and that person has really not such good karma.
It's very interesting. Growing up in Africa, I was told this and I noticed it. Never heard of anybody. People would lie down right under the coconut tree. Never a coconut falls on anybody's head. Never heard of it. It always falls a little farther away.
Okay, so coconut tree is nice to us.
It's nice.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for another interesting conversation.
you.
I look forward to the next one.